Hello and welcome back to the Fight and Talk 2 channel with myself, Mr. Fight and Talk, joined as always by the fantastic co-host of the show, the eloquent analyst over here. How are we doing, Prav?
Doing good, man. Tired, but enjoying this beautiful Sunday.
Good man, good man. And in casual corner, as always, the man himself, George.
All right, lads. All right, boys. I'm feeling a bit ropey as well because last night I decided to be uncasual. And I stayed up. I think I did the longest stint up overnight, didn't I? So yes, there we go. Please, the tides are turning. The tides are turning.
They are indeed, man. And if it is your first time to the channel, please hit like, hit subscribe, and all of those wonderful things before we get into the show. We do appreciate it. Although we're going to keep making content whether you do it or not. But subbing to us is free, and we make weekly episodes breaking down the fights. And we talk about some topical stuff as well. So we're going to get straight into it from some action from last night. And there was a guy that I was pretty hot on last week that I was very excited to see. A man who's very respectful after the fight, I thought he was, which was Jordan Wright versus Jamie Pickett. I thought this was a great fight because he looks like a librarian. I know I shouldn't generalize and stereotypicalize, this man for how he looks, but he fights like an absolute animal. He fights like an absolute beast. The elbows on the inside with Jamie Pickett going for the takedowns were just disgusting. And then the man was throwing absolutely everything and the kitchen sink at this young man. So, Prath, what did you see from the fight? And where does Jordan Wright go from here?
It's tough to say because middleweight is such a stacked division. It's going to be hard to say, it's going to be hard to be like, yeah, we're going to chuck him in against the top 15. But it was a great performance. I love his style as well. Like at the face-off, he kind of threw a little bit of a Bruce Lee stance on the dude, and I appreciated it because that kind of came from nowhere. Most guys, they give the mean mug or the uptight and close, but he gives a nice little karate pose in the background. So I appreciated that. The elbows reminiscent of Travis Brown back in the day. I think he finished 2 fights via those downward elbows against the cage, and they looked brutal. And you could see Jamie Pickett fell immediately to his knees, couldn't really take much more of the pressure, kind of went backwards, and looks like Jordan Wright is a natural finisher. And I think that's going to be something that's reminiscent of watching his fights over the last little while now. He looks like he's going to have a solid run here at middleweight, and I'm very excited to see who they match him up against next. I think if they chuck him in against someone that's right up there in the division, he might struggle a little bit from a technical standpoint, maybe. But from what I've seen so far, which hasn't been a lot because he is a finisher, he looks great, man. So I'm very, very excited for his future.
Yeah, I know who he can fight. He can fight Kevin Holland because Kevin Holland will fight anybody at middleweight. So
I agree.
He can fight him if he wants.
There you go. Get it signed.
Clash of styles.
He'll fight anybody. They put a contract in front of Kevin Holland and he signs it. He doesn't even know who he's fighting until fight night. He just turns up and goes, "Oh, I'm fighting you. All right, no worries."
He's just happy to be in there, man. He's happy to be in there, making money, getting drip, making bread, doing whatever these guys are doing, buying himself a new car and all those good things, which is fair play to him, As we've said before, MMA is a young man's game, as is all combat sports, in my opinion. And you've got to get in, you've got to make the money, and you've got to get out. Just like this other gentleman that we're going to speak about now, Jacare Souza, who did not get his arm out in time. Oh, my goodness. Can we go a weekend without people breaking bones, snapping stuff, tearing ligaments, as we saw as well on this fight card? George, tell me what you saw in this, because you watched it live, which is very unusual for you, my friend.
Yeah, man. I thought, you know what? I thought I'm going to push the boat out for everybody, give people what they want. And that is a more uncasual version of myself. And so here I am. And so this is the new reformed me. I look forward to doing a 3 a.m. for Font Garbrandt next Saturday and all that, and that great card that's coming up. But yeah, no, this one was like, this at the moment, it seems like the meeting at the moment, the UFC is proper savage at the moment. There seems to be something happening every weekend, and it's just the unfortunate soul this weekend was Jacare. The weirdest thing about it though was obviously Muniz, once he got it done, was I was just telling you boys before we started, the break of it though is the weirdest bit for me. And Pratt will probably have to go into a bit more detail as to why it's happened, but it's happened above the elbow, like just above the elbow apparently. And he's having surgery on it and all this kind of stuff, and he plans to come back, he says, but find that bizarre that it's happened there on the body. That I've never seen that, I don't think, before. To break it there, that must have been in tight, and it must have been super awkward. But maybe Praf can give a bit more insight into why that has happened in that position.
I mean, for me, to be honest, very, very good segues all over the gaff here. I appreciate them all. Wow. So I actually didn't know a whole lot about Andre Muniz before this fight, but it looks like he's had a hell of a lot of submissions here. Obviously, going in against Jacare Souza, we just assume Jacare's not getting submitted. He is the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest jiu-jitsu fighter in the UFC. I was about to say in the MMA, in the UFC, and you just never think to. You wouldn't even think to take him down. You wouldn't even think, like, why would you put yourself in a position to be vulnerable to someone who is so good off their back? But man, all credit to Andre Muniz, taking him down, controlling him on the ground, going for submissions, looking for positions. Like, what the hell? Like, I was actually quite stunned when I watched this. And again, it's because I didn't know much about his background. Now I do. I'm like, wow, okay, that's a massive feather in his cap. What can I say about the armbar? So he had a great position on it in the first place. Hips real high on the elbow, which is kind of where you want it to be. Your hips on there, control, the leg control over the shoulder. And I think he may have just kind of elevated his hips just below the elbow, as opposed to kind of on the elbow itself. And that's kind of looks like where the break is. But most commonly, it's going to be in this kind of area here. So your elbow and you're kind of just above your elbow is more likely where you're going to get snapped there. And it just looks like for unfortunately for Jacare, he kind of maybe tried to get. Yeah, and when you have a break from that position, it's unusual for it to have it just kind of above the elbow there. Most commonly, it's kind of on the elbow itself or just below it. So interesting to see the position where it did break. Andre Muniz is a beast, man, and he literally looked like someone that is going to give the middleweight division fits. He looks like he's kind of the new era Jacare, and that's kind of the way that I took it. Even though Jacare's, I would say, obviously known for his submissions, but his stand-up is legit as hell. And I think a lot of guys have trouble with his very awkward style. He's got no neck, man. He's throwing overhands like with his entire body. Exactly that. And so I think that really troubles people a lot because it's an unusual style compared to most other guys. And for Andre to come in here and just absolutely ragdoll, I'm going to say he ragdolled him. He took him down. He controlled him. He broke his arm. He broke his arm. If that's not the definition of ragdolling, I don't know what is. Amazing performance, man. So he was, for me, like one of the most exciting prospects of the evening in terms of going forward, like what his future is going to look like. He beat Jacare, man. That puts him right up there in the division, and that's going to make him his next couple of fights very, very tough. But he looks like he's up for the challenge, man.
I'll just say as well, just quickly, sorry to interrupt, Con. I'd say quickly, it was a treble bad night for Jacare. He lost, he broke his arm, and he won't be winning the award for worst injury of the year. So what was it? What was it worth it for? There wasn't much point. Chris Weidman still is winning that award at our end of the year award.
How is Chris Weidman's name coming up in every single week of these podcasts? Let the man rest in peace. Let the man rest in peace.
All I'm saying is last night when his arm popped, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's terrible. And then I reminded myself that last week or a couple of weeks ago, Chris Weidman's leg snapped in half. And I was like, that's still injury of the year. Anyway, carry on, Connor. I thought I'd just put that in there.
No worries. To me, you know what? I thought his shoulder had popped out because as he stood up, his shoulder had obviously dropped a little bit, which is very common when you pop your shoulder out in those positions. But my question to you, Prath, obviously, is with having a cup on, obviously the cups are very hard. They're solid. So if he was to have the groin area on the soft part of the, just above the elbow, would the leverage from the cup be more kind of pinpointed for the break? Do you know what I mean? Because if you're that's actually doing it in a gi,
that's a very good point.
Into it.
That's a very good point, and it's made from plastic. It's very hard plastic as well. Like you know, I've seen people have like you see people have very nice contoured cups or they have like gigantic ones. And I think if you have one of those big gigantic ones, you do kind of have a little bit of a leverage point there, and kind of like a base to really like position yourself on the arm, on the elbow itself. That's a really good point, and I can't see why it wouldn't help in that situation. I don't know if that's something that's like commonly known or if that's something that is like used as kind of a tactic in the UFC, if you will. You don't tend to wear cups as much in like just straight jiu-jitsu, as you know, as much as you would in MMA. Obviously, you need it in MMA. So I actually had never thought about that, but you raise a really good point.
Because I was just thinking, obviously, if you're in a gi or you're doing, just straight MMA in the gym or whatever, you don't have a cup on. When you have someone's elbow in your groin and you're pushing your hips forward, it's generally just going straight into your groin. Whereas if you have the cup on, you could potentially push a little bit harder, thumbs up, push a little bit harder with the groin because you have that protection there to then, invoke more force onto the submission itself.
Just to have more leverage, but it seems like it would only really work in the armbar position because you are using so much of your hips in that position. Maybe kind of like a little bit on a heel hook, because you're kind of driving force is your hips and the position of the leg in the armpit. I'm totally going to obviously break down the Benil Darius heel hook, so we'll get to it when he gets to the point. But like essentially, you can kind of use it in the heel hook position, but also the armbar position seems to be the only two places where you can. But yeah, I couldn't see why it wouldn't help you in any way, shape, or form. Just have a leverage point for the break. Yeah,
completely, man, completely. And then from broken arms to staggered knockouts, I don't even know what you'd call it. This was kind of like a mental delay. I kind of watched it and I had to tap the screen a couple of times. I thought my phone had broken and there was still noise going on. I didn't really know what had happened. Obviously, Edson Barboza put on a fantastic performance. And George, you're going to break it down just a little bit in a second. But the punch that caught him on the side of the eye, I thought, oh, he looks okay. He's taken that like a champ. And then all of a sudden it was game over. It was a very, very strange sight to see. There was a good kind of, usually it's like microseconds, whereas this was like seconds. Do you know what I mean? It was very, very strange. But George, what did you take away from that fight? And obviously Edson Barboza's fantastic performance. He was going to cruise to not cruise, but he was going to get the decision win anyway. But he managed to get the finish. What did you take away from the fight?
Well, it's like we said in the preview show, this was going to be an absolute war. They both promised war, and war is what we got from both of them. These guys, I mean, both of them in that division are tough as nails, these two. I mean, like how Burgos took the amount of leg kicks that Barboza was throwing, like, it staggers me. Like, and he was still coming forward, and his leg did not show any signs of like giving in or causing him a problem. So that was, and then obviously the kind of boxing style of Burgos was causing Barboza problems. He was really kind of roughing up the kind of the right eye, I think it was, of Barboza, and it was causing him a bit of a problem. These guys weren't giving in for nothing, but Barboza's a serious problem at featherweight. I think he's 4-0 now at that weight, and he says he feels comfortable. I think he's happy on his fight contract, and he's now going to be on Tuesday ranked in the top 10. We're looking at big fights against maybe guys like Dan Ige, Korean Zombie, Arnold Allen. You don't know, like, these kind of guys might be heading towards Edson Barboza. It's a big scout, Barboza. He's been around a long, long time. A win over Barboza carries a lot of weight as well. But in terms of the fight, it was everything that we said it would be. It was just back and forth slugfest, and they weren't going to do it any other way. There was going to be no kind of like, let's see how it plays out for the first round. It was just constant action. But onto the knockout, like I just mentioned, the knockout was really bizarre. It was like his body and mind were slightly disconnected at the time, and he took the hit, and then his mind, like 2 or 3 seconds later, realized what had happened and was like, oh God, no, that's not good. But it was kind of weird. It was kind of weird though, because like you said, I thought he took it really well. I thought he like weathered it and was doing fine. But I've never seen anything like it before. Like the such a delayed reaction, especially with a guy like Shane Burgos, who is an absolute animal. Like, you don't expect that to kind of finish him. I thought that the continual leg kicks in the end were going to be the downfall of Burgos in that fight. It ended up being a a punch to the side of the head that got him in the end. But look, this doesn't do too much damage to Burgos. You know, if you go to war with Barboza and you lose, you know, these things happen. It's not going to do much damage. You know, I think he's only had 11 or 12 pro fights. He's still in his 20s. I think he's 29. There's a long time left for Shane Burgos. And these kind of brutal wars with more experienced veterans like Barboza will stand him in good stead over time. For Barboza, man, like I said, he's a problem for people. He's experienced. He's an absolute animal. He's tough as anything. And he's gonna give featherweights an uncomfortable night's work. You don't want to be put inside the cage with Edson Barboza because, you know, he's coming for one thing and one thing only, and that is to absolutely destroy you.
Quick point I'd just love to make is Barboza's actually already fought Dan Ige and lost a split decision to him last year, I believe, in May. But while we're in the mood to talk about fights that Edson Barboza should potentially take, I know there's a wonderful featherweight sitting out there that hasn't got a fight. He was looking to fight a Russian gentleman, but the Russian gentleman doesn't appear to be in the rankings anymore. I think Edson Barboza versus Yair Rodriguez is a phenomenal fight. I think the fans would absolutely love to be behind that fight. Does Yair take that fight? I don't know, because Yair seems to be very protective of his record, which I understand to an extent. When you're in the top of the division, though, you got to take these fights against these dangerous guys. Look, I give all the credit in the world to Shane Burgos, right? He took that fight against Edson Barboza, knowing that Edson Barboza is an absolute killer. But I think he also knew that the fight itself would be fantastic. And I think people rate that more than, okay, you're fighting number 3 or number 5 or number 2, right? When we looked at the Beneil fight, Beneil versus Tony, it was a bit of a boring fight. I think people actually prefer to see a Shane Burgos versus Edson Barboza fight over a Beneil Darius versus Tony Ferguson fight, though thinking that, you know, the latter would be the more exciting fight. Man, all the credit in the world to Shane Burgos. Amazing fight. With like the poker face on Burgos on the first round when he was getting his leg lit on fire is incredible. And there was only like one time where he really like folded mentally, if you will, to the leg kicks. And he was just like, and you can see he kind of grabbed his leg a little bit, but like for him to just keep pushing forward after that is incredible, man. What a fight. Absolutely. That's a fan's fight. That's a fan favorite fight. That's a fight that, you know, if I have a casual fan like, you know, like George over here, like if I have one of those show up at my house and I'm like, let me show you a fight, I'm showing them like a Shane Burgos versus Edson Barboza fight. What a classic. I think that's really going to stand the test of time. And I really look forward to eventually seeing a rematch.
I'll tell you something quickly, bro. Just quickly on this one. Shane Burgos is the type of guy who isn't going to have the prettiest record come the end of his career, but you can be damn sure it's going to be an entertaining ride while it happens. And
he's fighting killers.
Yeah, man, this is what he does.
He's fighting killers.
He always says that. I'll fight whoever's put in front of me. I'll say yes. And that's what he'll continue to do. But Yair Rodriguez is a great shout for Barboza. The only other one I had in my head was Calvin Kattar.
Yeah. Calvin Kattar. And like, look at the only people that Shane Burgos has lost to is Edson Barboza, Josh Emmett, and Calvin Kattar. 3 of the best featherweights that are out there at the moment. Like, respect.
Yeah, man.
No, completely. And, you know, it was great to see the respect as well from these two gentlemen. You know, there was obviously an embrace afterwards. Shane Burgos didn't know what happened. Edson Barboza had to go and explain to him what happened. So clearly the knock to their side of the head, his brain separated from his body for a little bit, but his legs were, you know, sometimes these guys have such strong legs and such strong hearts, for instance, that their legs are like, yep, it's cool. We've got this. Oh no, we don't got this. And then to obviously fall back because of the disconnection between the two was just insane. But then afterwards, after the actual fight, I saw a little clip between Edson Barboza and Shane Burgos, and they were embracing each other a lot. And just, you know, Edson was very, very kind of thankful that he'd gotten into the octagon with him, and it was a fantastic fight. And those are the kind of things as fans that we like to see as well. So from a casual perspective, it's a perfect fight to see before, during, and after, to have that kind of respect and to say, like, look, this is what fighters should actually be doing and how fighters should act. Very much like the main event that we had between those two fighters that we're going to get onto in a little bit. Loads and loads of respect before, during, and after, which is fantastic to see. Really, really was fantastic to see. What wasn't fantastic to see was the terrible, terrible reffing. Again, you know, from a fan perspective, as always, we just look at these fights. We're not professional refs. You know, we've never been trained to be refs. But when the entire world is saying that was clearly not a 30-27, are you okay? What did you see? You know, what did you see that we didn't see, but the other two refs saw? The other two refs saw it 30-27 for the other person. You saw it 30-27 for the other person. You think, surely you should be discredited and shot in the street by someone, not me, I don't know, but just completely discredited in your organization and not allowed to do this anymore. Because it's just so unfortunate that someone has to have on their record. We say this all the time. We don't always look at the records and go, you know, we read into them a little bit, you know, because we're fans, as most MMA fans are. We're deep in it, you know. So we look at the record and go, oh, look, he's got 3 losses. You look into it and go, oh, they lost a split decision, and you think, wow, maybe they're not as bad. It may affect your decision in the future with them, but it was just awful. And there was two we saw last night. Prath, you want to talk about one. George, you're going to talk about the other. So Prath, let's hit it off with you, my friend. What did you see, and why do you want this person not to ref ever again?
Wow. I feel like I talk about this a lot, man, and it's disgusting, man. It's actually so disgusting. The credibility of a judge in this sense is just like, where do I even start? Like, so the fight that I wanted to look at was the Lando Venata versus Mike Grundy fight. Obviously, a very dominant, I wouldn't say dominant performance, but a very one-sided performance by Lando Venata. Incredible performance by him. Great jab. Seemed to really do well with the takedown defense against Mike Grundy as well, who is an accomplished wrestler. Amazing performance, and I really love Lando Venata's style. I thought when he fought Tony Ferguson and John McDessie, he had a really different karate flowing style that I think I actually much prefer, but he seems to have really like rounded out his game now, and he seems to be really catching his stride. And he was down at 145 and said that it was his easiest weight cut. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do at 145. Shambo boss. In terms of the refereeing, I mean, like, this is the same thing we talk about every week, every other week. It looks like just an absolutely sham of a referee who is allowing himself to, like, what fight is he watching? What fight is he watching? I think when the entire world sees it one way and only pretty much one guy, I would even imagine if you looked on like Verdict, I'm sure they show you like the amount of people that kind of went which way, right? I can't even imagine 5 to 10 people picking Mike Grundy to even win, you know, 2 of those rounds out of the 3 rounds, like to give him a 30-27. You saw him win the entire fight. Like, what fight are you watching? Why is there no credibility? Why is there no questions being asked to these guys? Why isn't Dana White not caring as well? Like, Dana White, it seems like he gets these questions a lot in the post-fight press conference, and he's like, oh, you know, well, it's Nevada's problem, or it's Houston's problem, or it's this person's problem. It's not our problem. We don't have any control over the judges. We don't have any control over the refs. It's like, okay, well, to an extent that makes sense, but why are you not, like, you're really affecting these guys' careers. When we look back now, we're thinking, okay, Lando Venata is coming off of a split decision win. That typically means it was a close fight and he really struggled to get to it. But like, if you actually look into the fight, you would say that he absolutely smashed Mike Grundy, you know, 3 rounds to 2, 2 rounds to 1. You know, it's mind blowing to me, man. I actually don't even have the words. I'm disgusted. I'm sad. I'm sad that continually, like, nothing will be done by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. We're going to sit here and have this rant, and I'm going to say I'm peed off and I hate the referees, I hate the judges, but nothing will ultimately happen here in this situation, which is the most depressing part of it all. Shame on Chris Lee, man. That's all I can say. And I hope the Nevada State Athletic Commission at least pulls him up on it and goes, what were you watching? At least just like rationalize it and just have it out there as a statement. You see all these damn commissions making statements. Oh, okay, statement about this, you know, statement about this. Let's make a statement on Chris Lee. What was Chris Lee's statement in this regard? What did he see in the fight? And I don't think there's, you know, I don't think the reporters are willing to go to the athletic commissions and ask these questions. It doesn't look like it's something that none of these guys care about unless it's on the fight night at the post-fight press conference to Dana White. It doesn't seem like they want to talk about it in any other way. And this happens so much week to week, like every other week, I would say there is at least one ridiculous decision. And on this card, there was 2. That was one of them that was disgusting. And George is going to go through the other one.
Yeah, just before he does, I just wanted to say, with the refs, for instance, they must have a couple of weeks ago, we realised that they, I believe it was Herb Dean, was a little bit stricter. And afterwards, he'd said, we actually all got together and kind of said, look, we need to be a little bit stricter on the fouls, on the eye pokes, on the fingers in the cage and that kind of stuff. And then since then, they've all kind of tightened their belts a little bit. And I feel like we've all noticed that the refs have definitely gotten a little bit harder, even if it is just a little.
Refs in the cage. In the cage, but at the desk in the judges, they're all crap, and they've never ever made an accurate attempt to be culpable for their actions, and this affects their careers. Like it's not as simple as like letting an eye poke go is one thing, letting a groin strike go is one thing. Literally saying someone didn't win the fight when they clearly did is literally going to affect their career, and there's no culpability for it. And it makes me sad, man. It makes me really, really sad. That there's no way. I want
to know what Chris Lee does Monday to Friday when he's not terribly judging referee. Does he work in like some sort of opticians, like teaching other people that they can't see, or what? I don't know. But George, what was the fight that you were annoyed at with regards to the poor judging?
The female fight on the main card, Chikagian Araujo. You know, this again is terrible judging for the simple fact, and we're talking about this is affecting people's careers, right? Now, look, Chikagian fought for the title last year and she lost to Valentina. Araujo is coming up through. People view her as a potential contender to Valentina. I know that's a strong statement because Valentina looks unbeatable, but people have to find narratives with certain fighters that can help push them towards that title fight. And Araujo's chance last night was to beat Chikagian, and that would have elevated her into the top 2-3 in the world, and that conversation would have started. Now, look, I don't think she won the fight last night. I do think that she lost 29-28, but to call it 30-27 is ridiculous. How on earth they scored the first round to Chikagian is ridiculous. Araujo outstriked her. She also had over almost a minute and a half of control time against Chikagian. And when you add those two together, how you get the other way round and give it to Chikagian doesn't make any sense. And like, I'm not deep in the how you score a fight, but I'm sat there last night at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I can clearly see that Araujo's won that 10-9. It's not difficult, you know. It's just frustrating because I knew when that fight ended, after the Mike Grundy fight, I knew that there was going to be a problem with this one. I could tell, I just knew that there was a problem coming. Someone somewhere is going to call this, and it's going to be completely and utterly wrong. And sure enough, it actually happened. I'm not sure who the referee was. You know, I don't think it was Chris Lee. It is notoriously him, but I don't think it was him. You know, but it's so infuriating because, like we're saying, these people work for years and years to get themselves into position. Araujo was in that position last night, and when that is taken away from her, it becomes frustrating because as fans, we're not seeing the results that clearly are what they should be. And yeah, you know, the other thing I wanted to mention about this fight, by the way, was I think there's a serious question mark that could be looked at, was that did Chikagian tap in the second round? I don't know if you've seen this. I thought it looked pretty suspect that she tapped. It was very light, don't get me wrong, but it looked like a tap. Mm-hmm. It wasn't picked up on, but no one's really mentioned it since or asked about it. And at the time it was mentioned and it was discussed. And I thought when I was watching it live that she tapped, because I was like, she's tapped. She's tapped there, hasn't she? But evidently that was not viewed as that, and we move forwards. But yeah, look, the Grundy fight, the Araujo fight, it happens every week. There will be a fight on the Garbrandt font card where we're discussing the same thing, and there'll be a fight at 263, and whatever moves forwards, we'll be doing this all the time. Somebody somewhere has got to rein this in. Like it's ridiculous. Someone's got to do something, but unless the UFC stand up to the state athletic commissions, or the state athletic commissions just admit that they're getting it wrong, which no one would hate on them for it. No one would be like, oh, I can't believe you've done that. Everyone would go, do you know what? Fair play, you know, because we can see it's causing a bit of a problem and it needs to be reviewed. But it just feels like we're going to continue to get bad decisions, and that ultimately leaves fighters feeling unconfident that when fights go to the end of the 3 rounds or 5 rounds, that they're going to walk away with a decision that's fair, and that's not how this sport should be.
So quickly on me, so the two judges, they're going to be called out. I'm going to call them out right now. Patrick Patlan was the one who did the Mike Grundy one. I've never heard of him in my life, so that was a bit of a weird one. And the other one was Marcos Rosales, was the one who gave Chukagian the 30-27 there.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Honestly, it's ridiculous. I sat there. I actually at the end of the fight thought this is either going to be a very close 29-28 Chukagian, or it could go the other way, 29-28 Araujo, because of the kind of the control time on the ground in the second round. You could maybe give the second round to her, but Chukagian's striking was pretty crisp and clean in that second round as well. It was really close. It was a really close fight, but to score all three to Chukagian, just it's bonkers. It's madness.
So I'm looking on MMAdecisions.com, I guess is the website, and the majority of the media actually scored it for Araujo over Chukagian. It was 11-7. So I'm not surprised either. I thought it was a very close fight.
I thought it was really close. I had it 29-28 Araujo, but I wasn't surprised when they gave it 29-28 Chukagian. It didn't surprise me. But the 30-27 just blew my mind. I was like, I don't get that one.
We were all slating Chris Lee, and it wasn't even him.
Screw Chris Lee anyway. I'm sure he's made a rubbish decision as well. So
yeah,
he's the ring.
He's the ring. But I think there was actually once, if my memory serves me, where Paul Felder was fighting, and he clearly lost. I can't remember who he was fighting, maybe RDA or something, and he clearly lost like all 5 rounds. He knew he lost. You know what I mean? And Chris Lee scored it like in his favor, and he called it out after the fight because he's very, very upfront, very front and center. This man, Paul Felder, got a lot of time for that man. And he was like, whoever the judge was that gave it to me, I don't know what you're watching. You shouldn't be doing this sport. Get away from this sport as quick as you can. And it'd be great to see a lot of fighters doing that. When the decision does go the other way or to your way or whatever, and you think you haven't won it, just go, you know what? I thought I won the first 2. I definitely didn't win the third, whatever. Own up to it and call the judges out.
The fight was Dos Anjos versus Felder. Because on MMA Decisions, you can literally click Chris Lee's name and see all the decisions he's made. He gave 50-45 to Dos Anjos, 48-47 to Felder. What the actual hell is this guy watching?
Yeah, exactly. And it's exactly the thing. You must look to the sides of you, pre-COVID or whatever it was. They were obviously a little bit closer, or how they work around the octagon, I don't know, but they probably give each other the eye and go like, what did you think? Yeah, I thought the other dude won it. And then the other goes, yeah, I thought he won it as well. And you just go, nah, I'm going to be the odd one out here. I'm just going to be different, For what, man? For what? I believe he actually, in main events, he went, I think it was the Fight Disciples or something looked into it a while ago, and they looked, it was like, he was the split decisions in main events, like 7 out of 12 times or something stupid. And you just think like, why is this man still here? Why is he still doing it? Anyway, enough about the judging and enough about the poor judging, because we're going to cover it in the next coming weeks anyway. One of the fights that did go to the judges, and fortunately, everyone decided that it went to the right person. Beneil Darius versus Tony Ferguson. Now, there was a lot of hype around this fight going into it because Tony Ferguson is known for being covered in blood, for busting up people's eyes, for getting his shoulder nearly broken, his heel nearly snapped off. This fight, unfortunately, was a slight letdown, in my opinion. It was a chess match between these two gentlemen. They both knew if they move their queen out, if they move their king out, someone's getting checkmated here. And it was very evident to see that. But Prath, what did you see and what did you take away from this? I felt like Tony was being quite negative on the ground. Great performance from Darius, but what did you see and what did you take away from these guys fighting?
Yeah, a fight that I think just had a lot of steam behind Tony Ferguson. I think the crowd were into it. The Houston people at the weigh-in were into Tony Ferguson, and Tony Ferguson came out and just seemed to just accept every position he was put in. Fantastic job by Beneil Darius, really able to control Tony, didn't really give him much space, controlled him from bell to bell. There was not much time for Tony really on top or in dominant positions, and really respect Beneil for doing that, because that's a tough out against someone who's so good off of his back. But what I looked into it and had from what I could tell, it didn't look like Tony had maybe a lot of time in his camp off of his back, because it looks like he didn't have any urgency. He didn't have any urgency to get up. He looked like he accepted a lot of the position. You see a lot of the guys, they get taken down, and the other guys, they're in the guard, and they close the legs of the guard. I'm like, why are we stopping here? Keep it moving, my dude. Put the feet on the hips and let's get the hell out of there. He just seemed to like close his legs up and, okay, I'm going to sit here now for 2 minutes and just get battered by Benil. Smart game plan. Obviously, the crowd weren't super into it, which I completely understand because it was a bit of a dry performance. But, he was able to control Tony, and Tony had no answers for Benil. That gives Benil both of his paychecks, and it also gives Benil a fight in the top 5 or, top 5, top 7. I'd find it very difficult to see Benil Darius get a top 5 fight here, even though he deserves it. I don't think a lot of the guys in the top 5 are going to be willing to sign the contract opposite him. Michael Chandler should, but I don't know. I don't know if he will. Now, what does Tony Ferguson look like going forward here? I want to see some real changes here. And I'm not talking about in his camp. He made loads of changes in his camp. Freddie Roach was in his corner. That's fantastic. That's a different training environment for him to be in. He did, I don't think he had a lot of chance to show much of his stand-up skills in that fight because, again, credit to Benil, was able to take him down, able to control him. I would love to see Tony Ferguson, if he is going to carry on fighting, because that's always a topic of conversation that everybody else has, except for the actual guy in the position of calling his career or not. Seems like everybody else has an opinion on whether he should retire or not. I'd like to see him take a lower ranked fighter. I don't think he needs to be fighting Michael Chandler. I don't think he needs to be fighting the top 5 of the division or the top 10 of the division. Let's let him have a bounce back fight. I was listening to Ariel show, and he made a really good point about Anthony Smith, right? Anthony Smith lost a bunch of fights. He was fighting against, Glover Teixeira, like the top of the division, and they gave him Devin Clark or Devin, I think his name is Devin Clark, Devin Powell, something like that, right? Who's like, not even top 15 in the division. And that gave Anthony Smith a chance to bounce back and have a fight where he could regain his confidence. And then since then has gone on a bit of a streak, has, started putting the wins together. And I would love to see that for Tony, get his confidence back in the octagon, allow him to get like a real cool submission that, is what he's known for. Someone maybe who's a wrestler, I want to see him go against someone that where his deficiencies are, but he doesn't need to be fighting like Michael Chandler, who's one of the better wrestlers in the division. Doesn't need to be fighting Justin Gaethje, who's one of the better wrestlers in the division. Maybe give him someone a top 15, top 20 guy. And I think from there, then you can really start to build him up from there. And that's a great little main event on a fight night card. Chuck him in there. Give the other guy a chance as well to really elevate his name as well. Like Benil Darius is now going to get all the credit in the world going forward. Like I said, top 5 to top 7 guys is his future now. So great work from Benil Darius. That's the main point that I need to make here.
Yeah, and the only problem I see with giving Tony a bounce back fight, or a bounce off, elevate back in kind of fight, is the fact that then he might be used as that gatekeeper. You look at it from 2 different angles. If it's like, right, cool, we're going to give him a bounce back fight, he's going to fight someone, ranked 17, for instance. That person that's in 17 is going to think, wow, if I beat Tony Ferguson, bang, I jump, I leapfrog everyone, and my name's now fully in the mix.
That's up to Tony to win those fights though. If he's put in that position, it elevates him. And I think Tony is one of those guys that will really push to fight the top guys. He's not gonna want to fight a top 15 guy. He probably wants to fight Conor next. He probably wants to fight, the guy who loses he wants to probably fight Chandler next, right? But I would love to see him fight someone a little bit lower ranked, get his confidence back, and then go from there. Does he actually even win that fight? Who knows, man? I think that then would also be kind of the telltale sign here. Like Cowboy Cerrone versus Alex Morono. He's not able to get past Alex Morono. Get the fuck out of here. And I think that's the same thing for Tony Ferguson here. If he can't be a fringe 15, top 15 guy, let's send him off to Bellator. Let's send him off to PFL. Let's get him out of here. I respect him a lot. I love Tony. Tony's one of my favorite fighters, but Tony's done, man. Tony is done.
I completely agree. I semi-agree, but I'm with you. I get where you're coming from. Now, George, obviously Tony was in a very, very difficult position yesterday with a very, very deep heel hook as well. Do you think that injury affected him moving forward in the fight? Do you think it affected his movement? He obviously said that it didn't, but it looked very, very painful from where I was sitting.
Yeah, it probably did affect him, but he's never going to admit to it, is he? You know, the guy is too tough for his own good. That's how I look at Tony Ferguson. You know, he'd probably be more beneficial. I suppose, like, when you're like 30, you can do all of this crazy stuff. You know, you can do all of this stuff. You can take the injuries. You can ride with it, you know. So in the midst of that 12-fight winning streak, he can do it all, you know, and it's not going to be a big problem. You're 37, almost 38. Your career is starting to wind down. You cannot fight like you have done previously. It's not going to work. People now have the cheat code to Tony Ferguson. You know, that's the problem. They know how to beat him, and he isn't showing. You know, he is not showing the kind of improvement from the Oliveira fight to the Darius fight that gives you the confidence that the next time he fights someone who's maybe going to do the same to him, that he's got an answer for it. I'd even argue in the stand-up, which we haven't really seen recently, there's guys up and coming who are going to give Ferguson problems. You know, even guys outside the top 15. You know, I think of guys like Rafael Fiziev, who is an unbelievable striker. He would give Tony Ferguson a hard night out. You know, he might lose, but, you know, he would give Tony Ferguson a difficult night. You know, I thought, though, at the start of the week, Tony Ferguson looked healthy. I thought he looked better. I thought the press conference, he was back to an old Tony Ferguson, cracking the one-liners, the Dana White privilege, all that kind of stuff, which was hilarious. And it gave me the kind of fake impression that Tony Ferguson was kind of back. He looked way healthier than he did when the Oliveira fight rolled round. But as soon as he got in there, it was just the same old Tony that we've seen for the last kind of 12 months. And it was uncomfortable. It was sad. And it wasn't actually pleasant to watch anymore. And for someone like, perhaps you said, someone who, like, I love Tony Ferguson as well. He's an absolute legend of this sport. But I can't watch too much more of this, to be honest. It was painful last night to have to witness it again. And, you know, he's now going to drop to the kind of number 10 kind of mark, which seems alien, like, for that to be the case. And I said to you off air, I think he's on a one-way collision course for Islam Makhachev. That's how I think. And you know what was right? Pride he'll take that fight because he'll go, if I beat Islam, I know, and I beat him bad, I bet I can get Khabib to come back. That's what he'll think. He'll have this completely warped mindset that if he can beat Makhachev, that he'll somehow get this Khabib fight going again. It's like, it's not going to happen. You're going to get annihilated by Makhachev. And this is a sad, sad ending. And I think someone, somewhere, before Tony Ferguson ends up in Joshua Fabia's training regime, needs to just say to him, let's stop. Like, let's just calm this down. Let's review this and let's find a way forward. And maybe Bellator, maybe PFL, you know, maybe that is the way forward for Ferguson now. I can't keep on seeing this. He took damage against Gaethje. He took damage against Oliveira. He took damage, not damage, but he was completely dominated by Darius last night. It's just, it can't continue. It's not a pretty look, and it's sad. But this is what happens to legends of this sport. There's no happy ending. He's found time. Father Time has caught up with Tony Ferguson, and the young killers of this division, the Dariuses, and the up-and-comers like the Fizievs, like the Makhachevs, they're going to see Tony Ferguson and they're going to see there's a scalp and I'm going to take him because I know that I can beat him. It's a sad ending, but this is the way Tony Ferguson's career is going at the moment. And the last thing I want to say as well is the Freddie Roach thing. Freddie Roach, I feel, has been a bit of a smokescreen. Freddie Roach rarely gives time to people. He gives time to the most minute amount of people in his circle. I don't believe that Tony Ferguson got that much. The fact that he was even there last night surprised me, to be honest. I was staggered that he was there. He gives his time to very, very little people. And I doubt Tony Ferguson has seen much time with Freddie Roach, despite, and obviously he had no chance to show any of his stand-up stuff anyway. But yeah, personally, I think it's a bit of a smokescreen, and it looks good on paper, but in reality, it's been a bit pointless, to be honest.
Yeah, no.
We should have had Henzo Gracie in this corner.
It's just ridiculous. There's no point having. There's no point. It's been like his whole career, Freddie Roach. It's not a criticism of Freddie Roach. In boxing, he literally has the most minute amount of people in his circle. And to think that Tony Ferguson from a different sport walks in there and gets all the love in the world from Freddie Roach, it's a complete, like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
And a respect to Freddie Roach here, but in a full crowd capacity, I can't imagine this guy's yelling loud enough for Tony Ferguson to even hear him.
No, there was no. I didn't get it, and I think there was this impression that because Freddie Roach was there, that this was going to be the big change for Tony Ferguson. It was like, oh wow, Freddie Roach, he's gone to wild card, mental. It's just a smokescreen. It just didn't work. He should have gone somewhere else to learn how to get off his back, because he was on his back for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Where was Eddie Bravo? Where was Eddie Bravo?
Oh man, yeah, exactly. Where were they? Where are all these people? Where are they for Tony Ferguson? They're not there anymore, are they? They're not there. He's been left out to dry, and he's getting destroyed by people. And he's going to continue. I can't see where the change is. I don't see where the change comes to Tony Ferguson. I think time has finally caught up with him.
Just talking about Father Time, and we're going to segue straight into the main event here. But talking of Father Time, Michael Chandler is 36. He is not that far behind Tony Ferguson, but I feel like these two gentlemen, they're on different wavelengths. You know what I mean? Michael Chandler obviously took the big L yesterday in fantastic form, because the first round was phenomenal from him. You know, great work on the feet, great work on the ground as well to put Charlie Olives in a guillotine as well, which looked very, very tight. But naturally, Charlie Olives kept his, I think it's the blonde hair, man. He just slipped straight out. He wanted nothing to do with it. And then obviously slamming to his back, putting himself into a body triangle. But to scramble out of that as well was just a beautiful performance from him, I thought, in the first round. And, you know, I was looking at it thinking, wow, something seriously has to happen from Charles Oliveira here for him to turn this around. And my goodness, mamma mia. Did he turn it around? Yes, he did. Wow. What a fantastic performance from Charlie Olives. Crisp hands. You know, my background has always been in boxing. I've watched a lot of boxing. I've done a lot of boxing over the years. And just the handwork from him was just glorious. The left hook still had the right hand up. The right hand came over the shoulder of Michael Chandler as well. And then to catch him with the left hook. Oh, again, as he was running across the cage, it was just glorious. Glorious performance from him. Fantastic pinpoint, laser focus, very kind of Israel Adesanya. I know where I'm hitting you. I'm hitting you exactly there. Look at you. You're on the floor now. And then it looked a little bit like Conor versus Dustin, when it was kind of like, you know, falling down the cage, and then the left hooks just to finish off were just insane. But Prath, you're going to break down this fight a little bit as well. George, you're going to throw your 2 cents in afterwards. But tell me, what can you say about this fight that I haven't really said about how excited I was to see Charles Oliveira win?
Man, so excited to watch Charles win this, man. And like, we all called it last week on the breakdown of this fight card. We all called it. The world called for Michael Chandler to win. The people of Houston called for Michael Chandler to win, even though Charles Oliveira actually used to be a resident. I don't know if he still is, but used to actually be a resident of Houston, Texas as well. So bizarre crowd, USA chants, stupid Americans. So wow. So I'm just trying to compose my thoughts there, because do you know what? I'm actually just so happy for Charles Oliveira, and like, you could see the emotion coming out of this guy, like the amount of energy that this guy had. Jumped the cage, yelling in Joe's face, yelling in Dana's face, running around, the amazing dance, the jump into the crowd. Like, I absolutely loved it. And I loved seeing it because he deserves it. And deserve is a big word that I think a lot of people don't really have too much gravitas with saying. But my God, like, what more can a guy do, right? 11 years in the UFC.
Yep. It was the second longest amount of time in the UFC without a title fight, just behind Robbie Lawler.
Bisping? Robbie Lawler, yeah.
Robbie Lawler was the most,
and
like 4,500.
I can imagine Bisping was number 3 there as well, because that guy took forever to get a title shot. Incredible fight. Incredible first round. I would love to break down the first round, and I'll hand that over to George for the second round to just talk about the beautiful moment, the emotion outpouring of both of us, because I know George felt the exact same way that I did watching this. Actually, as we mentioned at the start of the show, that George was the latest one to stay up here. I fell asleep on the walk of Viviane versus Caitlin Chukagian, and I woke up at the end of the fight and just saw Charlie Olives just going absolutely mental. So I just reversed it a little bit, went back and watched it, and just incredible emotion. The first round though, Michael Chandler caught him clean with a shot. I think defensively, Charlie looked great. Amazing kind of hand positioning, that kind of Muay Thai stance. I think he was really afraid more so of the head shots more than the body shots. You could tell he was just kind of eating the body shots, but moving very well with the body shots as well. Maybe not taking the full impact of those. And just, I think after the first time he really got caught by Michael Chandler, he was a little bit more defensively responsible. But when he got hit with that shot, God, we went into a crazy scramble. Chandler catching an amazing guillotine on Charlie Oliveira, which you don't see a lot. Kind of the same thing we were talking about with the Jacare fight. You just don't really go for a submission or wrestle Charlie Olives, but credit to Michael Chandler for actually trying to go for the position there. And the thing I really wanted to, that really was highlighted for me in that round, was that explosion from the back control. You know, obviously he thought that he could try and get a slam KO. That would have been probably the wildest slam KO win ever if he managed to actually get that. But he actually sunk the body triangle in deeper. And you can see Charlie was trying to go for the hand control. Great defense by Michael Chandler to try and avoid a lot of that kind of because I think once Charlie gets the neck, it's game over. Because I just know that he's got quite short arms for that division, I would say. And what I was seeing a lot of is he kind of, when I've watched his tape of him going for, especially for rear naked chokes, he likes to go for one arm and then kind of feint with one arm and then go straight with the other one. And he's just able to do it so quickly. So I think if he managed to even get a sniff of Michael Chandler's neck, he would have been game over. And very, very smart for Michael Chandler to wait for that tiny moment. And the explosion was crazy. He literally looked like he almost jumped out of the octagon when he spun around, and then gave him a couple of hammer fists on the ground. Charlie Olives, you know him for wanting to be on his back, throwing those kicks to the knees. I'm really surprised that Michael Chandler didn't just let him up and carry on trying to strike with him. I think the second round will probably tell you why he didn't want to strike with him. But just a great end to the round, you know, controlled by Michael Chandler, respect. I would probably say that I would give that round very, very, very close round, but I would probably give that round to Michael Chandler. And then, wow, the second round. George, take it away, my guy.
Yeah, man, crazy fight. Obviously, I was one that I was desperate to see live. So obviously I put myself through the ringer overnight to get to the point. But look, Charles Oliveira at the moment, with everybody else in the UFC, this is the best lightweight on the planet. For the simple fact that this guy is a submission specialist, yet he has got unbelievable hands. He's got the all-round game that strikes the fear of God into people. And people like, you know, I'm not taking anything away from these guys, but people like Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, even Conor McGregor will sit there and they'll go, oh no, this is not good, is it? You know, because I thought that perhaps if in a stand-up fight, I might be able to, you know, beat him. I don't want to hit the floor with this guy because he's going to be a massive problem to me. But now it's like, where'd you go with Charles Oliveira? You know, and you know, I kind of like quite secretly kind of always said that I always thought the most interesting fight Khabib could have had was with Charles Oliveira. I always thought that perhaps that was the true test in there. But he was always left at that kind of 7, 8, 9 kind of mark, and people kind of like overlooked him, and they never really believed that he was all that. And the Kevin Lee fight made my jaw drop. Then the Tony Ferguson fight made my jaw drop a bit more. And then last night I was like, oh my God, this guy is on a different planet right now. And the only guy that might come along and stop him in the next 12, 18, 24 months, I think, is a guy I've already mentioned, is Islam Makhachev. Perhaps might be the only guy that comes along and says maybe, but he needs a couple more fights against top opponents first. But I was going to jokingly say that we should rename this podcast the Charles Oliveira podcast, because we all absolutely love him, and I think we're all delighted that he's become a UFC champion last night. I think he's been overlooked for so long. He's been written off by so many people, and even during fight week this week, it was all like, Michael Chandler. This is Michael Chandler. This is a Michael Chandler procession. He's gonna turn up. He's gonna beat Charlie Oliveira. And at times in that first round, I was like, oh my God, he's in big trouble here. And the question marks started to come out. I started to think, oh man, is the quit back in Oliveira? But he dug in deep. He saw himself through, said, fine, I'll lose the first round. It's all good. I'm staggered that I think the judges scored that first round 10-8. Two of them scored it 10-8, which amazed me. It was a 10-9 to Chandler. I think that's fair enough. And then obviously the next 2 minutes is bonkers. They sit down on the stool. Obviously Chandler must feel like he's on top of the world. He's had a good first round. He's had some good moments. He's been in some difficult moments, but he's got through them. And as soon as the bell goes to the second round, the first punch that Oliveira lands, Chandler's in a world of trouble. The second punch comes in. The third punch then puts him to the floor, down the cage into the floor, and then obviously the finish comes in. And away from the whole fight itself and about the man himself, I said to you boys this morning, and I'm happy to admit I'm quite an emotional being, but there was a few tears of joy this morning for Charlie Oliveira. I think he's been written off for so long. And I think the opportunity to prove to people that he is undoubtedly now the best lightweight on the planet. I think like as Kamaru Usman would say, maybe it's time to put some respect on the name and respect that this guy is an absolute killer, and that whoever comes through in July the 10th, Dustin Poirier or Conor McGregor, they are in for a horrible night when they face him later on this year. They are in for a really uncomfortable night. I think Dustin Poirier thought, I'll see myself through against Conor McGregor, which I think he probably will do personally, and he'll fight the winner of Chandler and Oliveira. I think the uncomfortable thing is that he would have sat there last night and gone, I'm basically having to fight Khabib again. It's like having to fight someone who's I think it could end up being very, very similar. And Dustin might always be the bridesmaid and not the bride. But look, Charlie Olive's unbelievable. I hope he watches this, because we absolutely love him. We absolutely love him. I hope he somehow, somewhere he sees this. He does follow us on Twitter, so perhaps he might come across it. But look, congratulations to him. He's unbelievable. The fight was incredible. The back and forth of it. It was a proper title fight. Numbered card, pay-per-view, fans, the whole lot. It was everything that you want from a title fight, and he deserved it. He absolutely deserved it, Charles Oliveira. And I'm hoping now we're looking at a long reign for the new king of the lightweight division.
And the scariest thing is, from any fighter's perspective, is when you see someone and you go, right, he's got the most amount of submissions in the UFC and the most amount of wins via submission, blah, blah, blah. You think, right, he's going to take me down. He's going to try and submit me. And then he finishes you on the feet and you think, this guy's different. Imagine if we see Francis Ngannou go out there and catch a triangle or catch an armbar or something, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, this man not only hits like a freight truck, he can also submit you. Do you know what I mean? It's when these fighters round off all of their skills to not just being a striker, a wrestler, a submission artist, etc., but when they can just pick how they want to finish you, very Kamaru Usman, he can finish you how he wants to. Do you know what I mean? He will decide how he wants to finish you. And I think that's going to be exactly how Charlie Oliveira is going to be moving forward. Any other last points from you gentlemen on the card that we saw last night?
Just quickly, I'll let Praf go, but I think as well, I think the other question mark over Oliveira has been the self-confidence in his own self. I think last night, it completely dispels the myth about the confidence level that he takes going forward is huge. Like you just said, this guy has always been about the submission game. The fact that he now has hands and he's clearly lethal with them, the confidence that to fight anybody is going to be huge. And I love your message there. He has got lovely teeth. They're beautifully pearly white teeth. They are fantastic. He's got a beautiful smile. Got a beautiful smile, that man.
I love the fact that his corner all dyed their hair blonde as well. I don't know if they were all blonde, but they all look like they dyed their hair blonde. I love that. I love that. It's just like a little thing that just shows like you're all together in this. And what a beautiful moment, man. I agree with George as well. I shed a little bit of a tear when I saw this man raise the title, man. Like, it was a beautiful moment. Like him getting the actual title put around him just looked like such a culmination of just the emotion, the journey. Like, you saw it all on his face, and like it's everything that you want from peak mixed martial arts. Peak mixed martial arts was Charlie Olives winning the title there, and I think that is going to be one of those ones that you can really go back and show other people. That's the fight that you pull up on your phone, like, and go, oh my god, what, you got 6 minutes? Yeah, let's watch this real quick. And you show them it, and it's just chaos, and they love it. So two things that I'd love to just round off the podcast with, if you will. One of the things that was a big, I don't know if I want to say I was disappointed at it, but I think it's something that it's easy to fix, and it will make such a difference, which is the translator. Massive respect to Alex Davis. I know Alex Davis is the manager of Charles Oliveira. A lot of the Brazilian fighters, you see that guy in the octagon quite a lot after a lot of the Brazilian guys are winning their fights. It's because he manages the majority of them. And, great that he is someone that can speak both Portuguese and English and is able to translate a lot of those thoughts. Now, the thing that really made me, I wouldn't say not as invested in the win, was watching the post-fight speech. And, after he wins, he's going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. You can tell he's just all emotion at that point. And he's, speaking from the heart. He's speaking a lot. He's saying a lot of different things. And it gets to the guy who's translating, and he's like, yeah, he had a great fight. Respect to Michael Chandler. We're gonna hold this belt for a long time. It just seemed like it was real basic answers, and it didn't look like what Charles was saying was something that was just as basic as that. And I would just love to see a translator just give a little bit of more emotion and get behind it. The two examples I made, and I believe it was the last podcast or the podcast before that I made, was if you look at Zhang Wei Li's translator, very emotional, can really encapsulate what she's trying to get across. And the other great one was Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero's translator is one of the best ever. Just all emotion, kind of was able to not only say the words, but evoke the emotion that Yoel's trying to get across as well. And so with someone who is struggling to phrase all, you could tell that he was able to understand a little bit of what Joe was asking him in the cage. He was like saying, you had a tough first round. You could see him like being like, yeah, okay, cool. I understand what you're trying to tell me. But if he's not going to work on the English, I think the best next thing is just to get, and it's not a big difficult task. You just need to find someone who is able to bring that to the table. I actually like the old guy that they were using before. Back in the day, they had the one skinny tall fella who was doing it. I don't know why they got rid of him, or if he's gone somewhere else or something like that. But someone even as simple as that is able to just portray the emotions in a different way than Alex Davis. Again, respect to him. I know he's the manager of a lot of these guys, so he's just the guy that's there at the time. But it's a very small step that makes such a big difference. And I think that's what will allow the fans to really grab onto someone who is an international fighter and give them the respect that they deserve, and let them fully explain themselves in the way that they deserve to. So that's my point on that. And the only last thing I wanted to talk about was the beautiful triangle armbar that Andrea Lee hit on Shevchenko. Had her controlled for like two or 3 minutes, was able to get that kind of slight move in the hip. Antonina Shevchenko let her guard down for a second, and Andrea Lee snapped that up like Andre Muniz snapped up Jacare's arm. It looked tight. It looked like it was going to break. Respect to Shevchenko for enduring that for as long as she did, because that is a tough position to just be caught in. Like, you might have a little bit of a breathing room and you're a little bit out of there, but that's not exactly one of the positions you kind of want to be sat in for 2.5 minutes. So respect for her for lasting as long as she did. Andrea Lear, credit to her for getting the position on that arm, and it looked like a beautiful armbar. So mad respect to those.
And it's strange how they both go through the same training camp. obviously Antonina and Valentina have the same trainer. They go through the same camp, very rigorous, very kind of dedicated, old school Soviet Union, like gymnastics, kind of Olympics kind of routines and stuff like that. But one of them is just a different level. Do you know what I mean? Go ahead, George.
I just wanted to round off and say MMA is the best sport in the world, man. I know that's really, like, honestly, last night, like there were moments last night where it was just like, this is the pinnacle of sport right here, and nothing tops it. And I know all three of us adore this sport, and so it's easy for us to say, like, we all love this sport, like we live and breathe it. But honestly, there was moments, the Oliveira winning the title and the Burgos War and all of everything. It was, it was confirmed yet again why this is undoubtedly the pinnacle sport and the best sport going, no doubt.
Charlie Olives taking the strap off of him and raising it up is peak martial arts right there. That was the part that nearly made me cry. I'm not gonna lie. Respect. And also, I love it.
Big Dan Mergliata. I don't know if you guys noticed, but when Dana White actually put the belt on him, the metal clasp at the end actually smacked Dan Mergliata straight in his crown jewels. So he was clearly not wearing a cup. Put it that way. Go back and check out the footage of that, because it was very funny. It kind of clips him straight on the tip, I can imagine, and he kind of like wavers back in pain. But it was a very, mixed martial arts. It's got everything. It's got ups, it's got downs, it's got trials and tribulations, and it's also got a little bit of humor in there as well. And that is everything from us on UFC 262. It's been a fantastic breaking the card down with you guys as well. We're going to do a little breakdown card, a pre-fight show of Cody Garbrandt, the return of, and versus Rob Font, which I think is going to be a fantastic, fantastic fight. I cannot wait to see that. Rob Font is on a mad run. He is making some real movements, and Cody Garbrandt is, a legend in his own right.
And there's also a huge fight on that card as well with Yan Xiaonan and Carla Esparza. That's going to be for the next title shot potentially as well. So it's a good card coming up this Saturday.
Exactly. It's going to be crazy. We're going to talk about it later in the week. I'm super buzzing for that. But thank you very much for making it to the end of the Fight and Talk 2 channel. As always, thank you to the fantastic co-host of the show, Prath, the eloquent analyst, as always. George in Casual Corner, slowly making his way up just to be in Crush Corner, I think, because you're no longer a casual if you're staying up until 6 a.m, my friend.
Casual no more, man. I'm just Crush Corner.
That's it, just Crush Corner now. As we said before, we have got a little bit of merchandise. I will put the link in the description below. I'm wearing a Fight and Talk 2 t-shirt. Prath has got one of the beanies. George has got one of another t-shirt. He's got it somewhere. Don't get undressed, George. It's all right. Until next time, thank you very much. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and share with all your friends that are into MMA. We'll see you next time.